I am AGriffith, and I am here to present the professional learning plan for school year 2026-2027 for Burke County High School. So first of all, as far as the continuum ratings for what we've been working on with discussion boards throughout the semester, I'm looking at what does the data tell us. And so there are different indicators that we looked at. And so we found that for my school, mostly we saw that it was either between implementing or developing on most of the indicators. And then one of them even had between developing and sustaining. So the first one I'll talk about is the shared mission and vision. And this actually comes from two different indicators. So the first one is the shared mission indicator, whether learning for all is our core purpose, and whether teachers consistently use learning targets and success criteria. And the second one was related to the shared vision indicator, which is specifically about GROW, which is our learner dispositions framework. We are a visible learning school, so within in the second year with our consultant, we really looked at for one of the things our consultant talked about was low-hanging fruit. So we looked at our learner disposition. So we came up with GROW. G for goal-oriented, R for resourceful, O for open-minded, W for willing to collaborate, and L for lifelong learner. And we chose GROW so that it would stick because we're the Burke County Bears. So I'm gonna speak to that. This past year we talked a lot about like task target alignment. So when we did our learning walks, to be able to do monitoring purposes, we took off monitoring for the GROW learner disposition. So we saw that we lost some momentum there by doing that. So we know we need to pick that back up. And the course-alike PLCs are still often after school only. So for our master schedule, we don't necessarily have the planning for the course-alike PLC. So that's something, that we would like to see changed. So the PLC SMART goals is the second part, and this ties to the indicator about using school improvement goals to drive team goals, specifically whether collaborative teams are working interdependently towards the SMART goals that align with our school's goals. And we feel like our EOC classes, as well as our feeder classes, they're real strong here because we have benchmarks every 4.5 weeks. We're on a 4x4 block schedule. So we have 3 benchmarks during the semester, each semester. Because again, like the students were on a 4x4 block. So the students like switch after classes after each semester. In our feeder classes, like I said, we've implemented that as well. So we feel like they're strong for that. So outside of that, our non-EOC and non-feeder courses, of course, they lack our consistent data review goal monitoring. It's pretty much like hit or miss for that piece, so that needs to be tightened. For collaborative teams and data use, this one draws from 2 indicators. So one is about collaborative teams treating ongoing analysis of student learning evidence as essential. And the other one is dealing about clarifying the criteria we use to judge student work quality. So basically, we're looking at student work together as teams using a consistent protocol. So right now, that's not embedded across all teams, and we don't yet have that kind of safe space, I feel like, where the teachers feel comfortable being honest about their data for those non-EOC and non-feeder courses. We've worked really hard to be able to establish that. So looking at student work, again, for that task target alignment is also important, because if what task they're assigning is not relating to the standard, then we will never get the results that we need. So again, looking at the student work protocols, such as the tuning protocol. And the last one about the continuum ratings from developing, that was rated between developing and sustaining, was the communicating purpose. And so this comes from the indicator about leaders communicating priorities through modeling, through what we celebrate, and through what we're willing to confront. So our learning walk competition this past year worked really well for this. It created real engagement. And so teams worked really hard together to be able to come up with ideas on how to, of course, get their data up during when we did learning walk, when we did learning walks and asked the students the questions, what are you learning? Um, how will you know you've learned it? Where are you at it in your learning and where to next? They were able to be able to answer those questions. So again, like being able to work together. And so the next piece was talking about differentiated PL, differentiated PL coaching are needed. And we have announced learning walks, but we know that people can put on a dog and pony show for that. And so if we do more informal, unannounced learning walks, that would also help with that piece there, be able to move us to a higher level. So our three focus areas we have, number one is to revive and sustain the shared vision. I mentioned the growl learner dispositions, how we had that in a good place, but when we stopped like monitoring that in the learning walks, that became the students weren't able to answer that as much. And we also we want to weave the learner dispositions into the success criteria and not only stick to the academic piece. So we want students to be able, of course, to collaborate with each other because we know that according to like Hattie's effect sizes, that has a very, when done well, that has a very high effect size. And we want to rebuild the collective commitments that do not lose momentum when the priorities shift. And you can see, of course, that each of these particular focus areas have been aligned to the Learning Forward standards. Number two, we want to expand the SMART goals and the data use to all collaborative teams. So we want to coach all the collaborative teams through SMART goal writing, 4.5 week data cycles on a 4x4 block schedule, of course. Looking at student work, we've talked about it, and then also being able to know that impact by looking at common formative assessments in that data. So we know that the EOC feeder classes will continue their 4.5 week benchmark data cycle, and those non-EOC teams, we want to be able to coach them into the process. And you'll see in a minute where I talk about like the different cycles. So there will be a cycle called the monitor adjust cycle. So we will coach during that process. Okay, and then the last one is differentiated PL and tier coaching, and that one is near and dear to me because I'm 24 years into education, and of those 24 years, 16 of those years I've been an instructional coach. So I truly believe any type of PL that you bring about, you must have that coaching piece there to be able to coach people through the process. So, and people are different, just like we in classrooms where you have different people at different places. Well, different students at different places. Well, same is true with our teachers. They are all at different places. So we want to be able to provide that support as necessary. So your high flyers, your early adopters will serve as your model classroom leads, and the developing teachers, of course, will have that coaching support. And if they need the co-teaching cycles, I'll be there as well as the other instructional coach to be able to help that. And of course, you know, we always have those resistant teachers, but you may have truly struggling teachers. So is it a will or is it a skill? So they'll also receive one-on-one coaching. And like the APs will actually put on their coaching hats as well as long as myself as a coach. So there will be like collaboration to be able to help those people to be able to sustain like implementation of our areas. Okay, so looking at the professional learning, like looking at the months, we want to, of course, go slow to go fast. And so as a coach, I know there are coaching cycles. So this is why you'll see throughout. There will be a session that is taught, but then there will be time for teachers to try it out. It's important that they be able to try it out. Like, you can't just teach session after session after session. So they're going to have time to implement. And then we're going to have a time, of course, to monitor through the learning walks. And of course, the learning walks will occur every month. But again, monitor heavy and adjust as necessary. We may have to adjust our plan because we know for example, SMART goal training. If we see by January things still aren't right with the majority of staff, we know we have to back up and punt. So just like our students in classrooms, we also have to do with our teachers to be able to bring about change. So again, that goes off of basing off of a coaching model. So August, again, looking at that focus area of GROW learner dispositions relaunch. September, teachers trying it out. October, we know that impact is one of the visible learning strands. And so we're going to really look at that data from those learning walks, and also maybe some other type of qualitative data from our teachers to be able to see if that made a difference and adjust as necessary. And then November, we're going to start SMART goal training. So we're going to have a session there, and then we're going to let the teachers try it out. And then again, come back in January, monitor, adjust. We're really looking at that data to see if we need to move forward or back up and punt. And then February, looking at student work using the tuning protocol. We'll do that with everyone to make sure, of course, there's task, target, and alignment, and also to build that collective efficacy piece amongst the teams. So we know that according to the visible learning principles, that has a very high effect size as well. So there'll be a session there. March, teachers will have a chance, of course, to try it out. And then know that impact in April. And then, of course, May, we're going to have time to reflect as a team, as a faculty, have some celebrations, and then, of course, we're going to plan for the next school year. So we're reflecting and reviewing there. So all throughout, differentiated coaching will start in August whenever we have our first session. So it'll go through the whole year because this is the most important piece. You got to have that piece in place. All sessions will be conducted in faculty meetings or collaborative teams. And like I said, learning walks, unannounced and announced, will be conducted monthly. So that will be that data piece. So it's great to have a plan and all, but what do we consider success will look like at Burke County High School when this plan is implemented? So 80% of all students will be able to articulate all 5 visible learning questions, and I talked about those before. But I think that adding back in what makes a good learner to address the learner dispositions is going to have to be back in there, because again, that's low-hanging fruit, but you get those skills of goal-oriented, being resourceful, open-minded, and willing to collaborate, and lifelong learning. And so we know that those are skills that all students need to take with them. So building that into the success criteria will be vital. So again, 80% of all students will be able to articulate all 5 visible learning questions whenever we go in and do learning walks. All teams will complete at least 3 data discussions per semester. So we know that our EOC classes and our feeder classes have that in place right now. But like I said, outside of that, not so much. And then there will be at least 1 model classroom per department up and running by October. And this is important because I, as a coach, can model things all day long, but it is so much more powerful when a teacher goes into another colleague's classroom to be able to see actually what that looks like. And that is also building capacity with your teachers. All right, and then as far as looking at achievement, a 3% proficiency gain on the Georgia milestones for our Lit Comp 2, Algebra, Biology, and United States History EOCs. And also, we also want to look at like into pathway assessments. So we want to look at their past participation rate, and we want growl to be reestablished in the class, like I said, back in the classrooms and monitored in learning walks and be part of the success criteria for the lessons. And if we want to look and see how this PL plan ties to the standards for professional learning framework, you see that again, back from the presentation that I gave before, there's rigorous content for each learner, transformational processes, and conditions for success. Those are the 3 prongs. So as far as the learning practices, of course, like your differentiated coaching will meet the needs of each teacher. The curriculum assessment instruction and this professional expertise, when we work on looking at student work through the tuning protocol as well as the common formative assessments, this will build your teacher expertise. They will be able to look at a piece of work and determine if there is task target alignment. For the transformational processes, so standards underneath that, learning drivers and evidence. So we'll be using that learning walk data and our benchmark data to be able to make decisions about what teachers need in those months that were designated for monitor and adjust months. The next piece, you've got for standards, you've got learning designs and implementation. So the session, implement, monitor, adjust cycle with the built-in differentiated coaching support is built to sustain change with our focus goals. So like I said, you've got that natural coaching cycle all throughout the year to be able to help the teachers and catch those that may need like more support. And finally, the last prong, we have our conditions for success. We have our standards, learning foundations, and culture for collaborative inquiry. We want to expand the use of SMART goals outside of those EOC and feeder classes. And also our data conversations to all teams. So we want to build a culture where all staff can experience that type of learning and to also increase our student achievement. And then lastly, we have the standards of leadership and resources, which are so very important. We want our administrators to be able to join in learning walks. We want them to attend the PL sessions. We would ask them to also protect that PL time and support model classrooms. We want them to be able to assist the coaches when there are resistant, struggling teachers. So really, making sure that there is buy-in from them too, because perception is everything and our staff is watching to make sure. So in order to have like a PL plan, we have to inspect what we expect. So the monitoring piece, the frequency, the intensity, and the duration is very important for implementation. And so lastly, how does this PL plan tie to learning by doing? So the PL calendar repeats a cycle. So if we look at our learning by doing text, so Dufour et al. Discuss the link between cultures of collaboration in schools with school improvement. Effective schools also make sure there is time for dialogue and reflection in the process. So we see that this particular PL calendar is a model where we have teachers to learn something, to try it out, and we monitor and we adjust as necessary, and they're able to get that support. So that supports the work of the authors. Also, the second prong, we want to monitor and adjust as we come along. So the monitor adjust part of the cycle utilizes the data. So that is tying back actually to the Learning Forward reference, and that was about evidence. So Dufour et al. Discussed the importance of monitoring teamwork, not only looking at like individual, but also the collective, because teams learn at different rates and different times. And, there will be times where you need to celebrate. You need like quick wins. You need celebrations. And then there'll be sometimes you have to back up and punt because you won't be exactly where you are. So that's where the support piece is necessary. So, like I said again, I feel like this cycle of the PL plan allows for that time of monitoring and adjustments to take place for sustainability of what we are trying to accomplish. And like I said, like with the final part, which is near and dear to me, that ties to learning by doing, is that coaching is differentiated, tiered. So back it up, right? The research for learning by doing, DeFore et al. Discussed the effectiveness of adding coaching to traditional forms of PL to improve um, teachers' practice. And also, as referenced, I remember early in my coaching training, all of my consultants referred to Joyce Showers, who talked about that particular thing as well. When you add the coaching piece, it provides that support that is necessary for the teachers. Also, DeFore et al. Explained that part of a leader's responsibility is to build capacity to succeed at what they are being asked to accomplish. So you are building that capacity with the teachers. And our plan that we have right here for Burke County High School is a plan that supports a tiered model and not a one size fits all. PL is never a one size fits all. There must be differentiation throughout. Just like we preach differentiation for instruction in the classrooms, you've got to do the same thing when you do PL. And so again, we referenced DeFore and the Learning Forward, but I want to tie back